Hi, my name is Anna Jackson, and I'm a curious mind who wants to meet interesting people. That's why this show is called Whattaya Say with Anna J. So, should we go and meet somebody interesting? Hi, and Happy New Year. So, I'm so excited because today I have a very special guest. He'll make you kind of step back in time while leaping into the future. Of martial arts, by the way. A guardian of history. He's a master historical swordsman, bringing that elegant yet deadly art of rapier and long sword fighting into life for modern students like me, because I'm going to learn how to do this. Whew! He runs the Ascalon Academy of Historical Swordsmanship, and I am delighted to introduce my guest, Tyler Murdoch-Terrian. Hi, Tyler.
Hello. Honored to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you here, and Happy New Year to you.
And to you too.
So why Murdoch? Tell me a little bit about your pseudonym.
Well, a number of years ago, I was lucky enough to discover a medieval recreation society. And they're worldwide, and there's a local group here in town.
We're going to talk about that.
And part of becoming part of the group is you create a persona or a person that would have lived at the time you've chosen, anywhere from 500 till about 1600 AD. And you build a personality around that, their likes, their dislikes, and one of the fundamentals of that is the name.
Right.
I had some friends who ended up giving me the name Murdoch, and we managed to prove that it was a name used in period in the 15 and 1600s. So I ran with it.
So does this kind of allow you to step then out of this amazing life and into kind of the reality of living in Kelowna, British Columbia? Does that help you a little bit, or do you become Murdoch in your life? Does it become part of you?
It's different for everybody who plays. For me, it did, definitely. It allowed me to sort of sidestep my modern, mundane issues, house stuff, kids stuff, that kind of thing. But as I've gotten older and more people know me as Murdoch now, it is kind of, there's more Murdoch than Tyler now.
Oh, I love that.
In some ways. And Murdoch does the things that Tyler wanted to do as a kid, growing up. And now I get to be Murdoch a lot of the time.
Okay, so let's go back into the first. Tell me a little bit about how you discovered this passion for the medieval, and kind of what sparked that fascination from a child, or was it something that you learned later?
Movies.
Movies.
I always tell people that I've seen way too many movies as a kid.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 80s, so all the sword
Well,
and
so have I, but I
swords
still don't want to yield the sword, so tell me about
those are the ones that, it probably is an influence of my dad. Those are the ones he liked to watch, the sci-fi, the fantasy stuff, the Conan the Barbarian, Princess Bride, these kind of movies. As a kid, Saturday mornings were king, and before the cartoons would come on, I would watch Zorro and those kinds of movies. So that hero with the sword saving people and doing all those crazy, amazing things as I'm sitting there in my pajamas eating my cereal really spoke to something inside.
So what's the difference between going to drama school and learning this in drama rather than actually taking it and learning the absolute inside from its beginnings history?
I've not taken any of the stage combat, but I know some people who have a smattering of it. And the biggest difference is when I teach people to hit each other.
Yeah.
So with control, and obviously not to leave bruises, because if you hurt your friends, they don't want to play with you anymore. Whereas in stage, you want it to look flashy, look big, but not actually hit anybody, because every stage performance is unique. And if we're if myself and my fellow actor as opponents, as mortal enemies, if one of us moves in the wrong direction while the other one's swinging with force, because you're making it look good,
right.
Injuries can happen quite easily. And in front of a crowd or in an audience, that's not exactly optimal.
So where do you go to learn the actual inside outs of this? Because you didn't take it in drama school. It's something that is absolutely real. If we had to go into medieval times right now, I would stand behind you and say what he does. So when did that happen? When was that? I want to do this for a living. I want this to be my master passion.
It's always been in the back of my head, and the reality came about because of an old employer.
Okay.
He used to teach when I first met him. He'd stopped teaching, but he used to teach the rapier. the Italian rapier. And he made the mistake one day of telling me. And at that point, I bugged him for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah.
And he finally said, okay, fine, I'll teach you. Just stop bugging me. And we went from there. I would go to his house, and we would spend an hour or so doing drills, learning techniques, terminology, and then I would practice it. And one thing led to another, and we ended up getting into the SCA together. And
now, for anybody who knows, what is the SCA?
The SCA is the Society for Creative Anachronism.
Okay.
It is a medieval recreation group worldwide that does our best to try to recreate the spirit of the medieval times without the downsides like dysentery and and that sort of thing, right?
Okay, so because there's such a fascination about this, because I remember living in England and being invited to go to a on the horses sword fights, and we got to eat like medieval food and things. Where do you really put yourself in the days of the medieval times, and you take it very seriously? It's not like, look at this, it's a joke. Because for us, I'm like, oh, isn't this fun entertainment? But this is serious for you.
It can be quite serious.
Yeah.
One of the things about the SCA is that you get out what you put in.
Right.
You can show up on the weekends with very basic clothes, with your weapons, and fight in the tournaments or the war. Have dinner, make merry with your buddies, and then get up and leave the next day on weekends when we have the events. Or you can spend copious amounts of time, energy, money recreating a full camp, like tents.
Is this you?
We sit in the middle.
Okay.
We sit in the middle. We like to make our encampment as period as possible without too much of an outlay. The past few years, I've been busy building a little Tudor house on a trailer bed.
Stop.
So I don't have to put up a tent every event.
Yeah.
And so you get out what you put in. And I know lots of people who spend 2 days just making merry and fighting, and other people who you walk by their encampment and everything looks like it belongs in the 1200s or the 1300s.
I want that passion.
It becomes a dance when you have two opponents who are equally matched and
Right.
know each other. So if myself and one of my students, when we fight, because we fight together against each other so often, and I've taught him everything he knows, it'll be move, counter move, counter move. And from the outside, it might look like a dance, but neither of us are trying to dance. We're both trying to get in the attack.
And right.
So it can be very intense, but it can flow back and forth.
And there are points where if you hit something in a different place, or what, like when you say tag, I love that. Tag, but without killing each other.
Some tournaments have a point system,
Yeah.
but most of the time we have a very specific rule set. If you hit me in the head, the torso, or the groin, I'm dead.
Right.
Because in period, I mean, if you get in the head, that generally ends your life. Very much, at the very least, it ends the fight.
Right.
If you hit me in the arm, I lose the use of that arm. If I get hit in the leg, I lose the use of my legs both, because hopping on one leg and trying to fight cohesively is not very realistic. So
Yeah.
we also have caveats in that you can hit me in a way that my limb would be damaged, but I can still fight. Whereas in period, that wasn't always the case. And the other side of it is that if you touch me in the chest with your sword, or with the tip, it's considered death. I've died. In some tournaments, I'll fall down, in a dramatic flare.
Oh.
But in period, we have medical records between opponents who stabbed each other a dozen times each, and both of them walked away and lived to tell about it. So it's
you do
not so
keep
cut and dry.
records of different opponents, and so do you teach?
Mm-hmm.
So when you teach, what are you trying to teach your students? Because it's not just about how to defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful craft. It's art.
Well, in the 1600s, when a lot of the manuals we have today that have been translated from Italian, from French and German, they were called, in one form or another, the art of defense. Because a merchant or somebody of well means but not highborn needed a way to defend themselves, because they would walk around with fancy clothes, a nice sword, and a coin purse full of coin. Not always easy to defend oneself against the ne'er-do-wells and the ruffians of the time. So they would send their their kids to learn the art of the sword, the art of defense, so that they would walk around with a sword, they knew how to use it. So if they were jumped, they could defend themselves properly and escape, and that sort of thing. That evolved to the stories that we're familiar with now, like the Three Musketeers, and you've insulted my honor, now we're going to fight over my honor.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it ended up. But it is, when I teach it, I try to instill a couple of things. One, safety and control. Because, like I said, if you're hurting your opponents, nobody wants to fight with you. Because it's fun. We do this for fun.
Yeah.
Number two, the passion of the sword, the passion of the art. If you're in it with a sword and you've come to me for instruction, there's a passion there. My job is to fan the flames.
And what age range are you talking about?
We generally don't take kids younger than 14 for a couple of reasons. One, they need to have focus because we do drills and we have adults and they're looking to learn. The second is the swords aren't always light. They can weigh a couple of pounds, which isn't too bad. But in the guards we hold and the positions we use, you're holding it for a long time. And it's like holding a glass of water like this. For the first 10 seconds, it's not a big deal. After a minute, it becomes a big deal, right?
Okay.
So they need to have enough strength to be able to hold the weapon, to be able to learn the techniques and do those sort of things. So at 14, we find, depending on the kid, that they can go either way. But the ones that really want to be there, stick around.
In a minute, we're going to talk about, we're going to actually do something with the swords. But I just wanted to, before we do that, I just want to kind of say, so those century-old fighting manuals, what was the most challenging part of translating them into historical text and then putting them into practical lessons?
I'm lucky enough that many people have come before me, and I can read their English translations.
Okay.
And a lot of time I can read their interpretations of those. Having said that, I've worked on a couple of manuals. Vincente Saviolo, whose Italian treatise was the first, I believe it was the first to be translated into English in the 1560s, I think it was. So I've gone through the manual, and it's in Shakespearean English, which is quite a mind twist, trying to understand what he means by the way they talk.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the fascinating life of Murdoch. So I'm back with Murdoch, and he's got some swords, and I get to touch one. So which one can I touch?
How about we use the rapier first?
So how do you hold it?
So the rapier is a weapon that is primarily designed to be thrust. So it's very point oriented.
Like that.
So what you're going to do is take your hand, you're going to put your index finger over the crossguard.
This one?
Yep.
Yeah. Just
like that, and then your fingers are going to be more or less in a handshake grip. The thumb can be up against the back here somewhere, wherever it feels comfortable for you.
And why is that? Why is this it just, it feels like I've got control over it.
There's two ways to hold a sword. There's what's called the hammer grip, like a hammer. This is, we hit things because that's where we were designed. Okay. The problem is it doesn't allow my wrist to orient the tip of the sword onto a target easily.
Right.
The moment I put my finger over the crossguard, now it's almost point and shoot. All I need to do is point with my hand in a handshake portion, and the tip will be where you're pointing.
So I'm just looking at these beautiful designs. So you told me earlier that you had these made, but that you did the woodworking yourself. What kind of wood is this?
That is a Purple Heartwood given to me by one of my fencing students as a thank you.
Purple Heartwood, where do you find that?
I'm not sure. I don't.
It's amazing.
It's
dark.
Super nice.
It feels good.
It's actually a much stronger purple, where you see it reflected in there.
Exactly.
I sealed the wood with the blowtorch.
Oh, you did.
And then I oiled it and sanded it down to give it the nice slick surface. I couldn't get as much of the purple to come back unless I really sanded it.
Yeah.
And
but you can see it coming through.
Yeah. And I feel like the more I use them, the more that's going to wear a bit, and it'll begin to develop a patina over the years.
And is this something like your signature?
My device in the SCA is 3 Templar style crosses, and then a chevron of blue above.
And you wear that as your?
Not usually, but it is on I have a shield that I use during war.
Okay.
That it has on there, as well as a couple other things like banners. We've got a banner that hangs up.
And what about this? What's this one?
This is a replica of a German longsword.
A German longsword. Yeah. And why is it different in Germany and Italy and everywhere else? Like, so what are the differences?
In Germany, they were very, very big on the longsword. They had a long tradition from the 1300s by a fencing master named Johannes Lichtenauer.
Okay.
And that traveled through the centuries. It wasn't until the mid 1500s where single-handed weapons like the rapier began to become very popular throughout the rest of Europe.
All right.
And Meyer was forced to admit that this is slow because it's a two-handed weapon in comparison to the single-handed weapon being used by a lot of other countries. So he went on travels, learned what he could about it, brought it back to Germany, took that, what he'd learned with what he knew of the longsword tradition, Joachim Meyer, who was teaching the Lichtenauer tradition, combined them into a system that would allow his students and good manly Germans at the time to defend themselves against the foreigners.
So this rapier, you brought some clips with us. Let's just look in there and show me a little bit about that one.
So the first one is a guard from Salvatore Fabrice, whose manual came out in 1610, I believe.
Manual, okay.
And it is, I don't remember which guard it is, unfortunately, I'm not up on it quite so much. But he holds the blade across his face.
Right.
And he's got a dagger in his hand, but you can use open hand. And when he attacks, he throws the weapon forward into his opponent and either reaches out to block his opponent's attack with his open hand or a dagger. And launches himself into a lunge, attacking and defending at the same time.
And what is that called? You told me actually. You British code, but you gave me another name.
I don't remember what it's called, the specific attack itself. It's a fancy Italian term.
A fancy Italian term
so
by Mr. Fabrice.
Unfortunately, I need to brush up on my Italian. But it's
I need to eat more Italian.
Yes.
No, sorry. Okay, let's watch the next one. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so what's that?
This is one of my favorite techniques of any of the Italian stuff that I know. Maybe we switch?
Yes, please do.
The incartata, or a form of the incartata, or the sottobotta, it's called.
Okay.
Where you're in your guard, so I'm set up against my opponent, and when they attack, I don't defend, I go under their blade, throw up into their belly, and avoid their attack because they're attacking on this level. I drop to the floor, stab them in the belly, all in one motion. So I'm doing a couple of things there. I'm voiding the space. I'm using a body void, so I drop to the floor. I'm also attacking at the same time.
And they don't expect that.
And it doesn't work if you have an opponent who's passive or very careful. If you have an aggressive opponent who's charging at you, it works a treat. I've used it in tournaments against aggressive opponents, and as long as you time it right. If you time it right, they're attacking and you're going beneath their sword and they have no way to stop themselves and they die. If you attack, if your timing is poor, you're halfway down in a sort of motion here, unprotected, and the distance isn't right. So now they recognize what you're doing and they can stop.
Right, okay.
Your head is wide open for a counterattack.
Yeah.
And I've done that as well. That is less advantageous.
So I just wanted to say, when I was like pretending to, all of a sudden I just did this stance and you did some footwork. How important is footwork to your actual fight with a sword?
Footwork is...
Can I do that too?
Sure, there you go.
Thank you.
Footwork is one of the most basic fundamentals of any type of martial arts. It doesn't matter where it's from. Your feet will get you where you need to be. I tell my students all the time, average footwork will get you into trouble, i.e. you'll be too close.
So tell me an average footwork and tell me a masterful footwork.
Average footwork will be somebody who moves around, and then when they get into trouble, their feet will stop moving.
Right.
And that's trouble because my hands now need to be faster than my opponent, and I can't guarantee that.
Okay.
And if my hands are not faster than my opponent, I will die.
So what is a masterful foot?
Good footwork will get me out of trouble.
Okay.
The moment I get into trouble, my feet will move, and I will pull myself out of the engagement. It's never a bad thing to get out when you don't have control of the fight. Masterful footwork or advanced footwork will mean I can get out and then turn the tables on my opponent by stepping sideways or lunging on an angle, where then taking back control and winning the fight based on my footwork.
Is that part of your training too, is just practicing?
Oh yes. We start every class with footwork. Forward and back, left and right, moving on angles, simply because things happen so fast in a fight that you can't think about it.
Of course,
if I have to think about what my feet are doing, I lose track of what my hands are doing, never mind what my opponent's doing.
Right.
And I'm dead. And it still happens even as somebody who's been fencing for over 20 years, where you'll approach your opponent and you'll have a thought, and you'll be like, oh, I could do this thing. And that will be the moment they attack, and you just stand there while they stab you. And it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
As well as it's very common for people to stop and go, yeah, you caught me thinking.
So, so you have to be totally one.
Your feet need to do what they need to do based on the input.
Instinct, gut, training. What are the things? What are the things that we can recommend? So instinct, gut.
Repetition. Muscle memory. Your body needs to know what it needs to do before your brain recognizes it needs to do it.
Do you have a couple of names of things before we go into our next break? Do you have something that you can show me?
For the longsword? We can.
I don't know.
Well, for the longsword, let's have you throw an attack.
Okay.
So we have something we call a lazy tug.
Okay.
It's a guard that Maya uses. So top hand goes there, finger not over the cross guard. So just right there like that.
Oh.
And it goes up at your shoulder. Watch the lights. And then your bottom hand on the pommel. And so you will take your right foot and put it back behind you.
My right foot?
At an angle. Yeah. And the front foot there. This is called lazy tag. In the German system, tag is up or roof, depending on the interpretation, and it's usually held above your head.
Okay.
But the ceilings are an issue when we do that.
Okay.
So in order to throw an attack, we push the weapon forward, and then we tilt the sword down. And usually it's on an angle, on an X, on your opponent, as you do that. And then when you do that, you step out to the right.
Okay, so...
On an angle.
So I'm like, step back.
Yes. And it's really important, and this is where the footwork comes in, that our feet are pointing in the direction we're moving. So our front foot is pointing forward, and when I step out, the toe and the knee are pointing in the same direction. This way, if I slip, if the ground is uneven, I can catch myself without hurting myself. If I step out, my foot is turned. Then I risk damaging parts I need.
No, maybe.
Almost.
It's like a saber. I'm like, it's not a saber.
I can't ever confirm people use saber sounds at times when we're fooling around.
Okay. It was my instinct. You know what? I have to have you back because I can't believe 30 minutes, well, it's almost 30 minutes have gone by. And that's my show. I'm going to be right back for our little questionnaire so that we're going to get to know him even deeper. See you in a minute. Well, I think that we've all learned something here today. Tyler Therrien, thank you so much for being on my show. But before we finish, I have pretty much a good understanding about who you are. But there are 15 questions that I am going to tell you right now, and that we're really going to probe into who is Murdoch, Tyler Therrien. Are you ready to be known?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. The best sandwich?
Probably default to a PB&J. I grew up on them and fell out of them for a long time, and as I get older, I realize just how comforting a good PB&J can be.
Smooth or crunchy?
Depends on how I feel, or technically, what's in the cupboard.
Best jam?
Strawberry, raspberry, I'm not too picky between the two.
Toasted or not toasted?
Depends. If it's fresh bread, it's got to be not toasted. If it's a couple of days old, it's got to be toasted.
Okay. So, what's one thing that you own that you have to throw out, you really should throw out?
Probably all the things that I'm keeping just in case.
Okay, so there's not one particular thing that you're kind of like me. It's like, I might need that, whatever.
It would be expensive to replace this. Let's just stick it in a cupboard somewhere.
Okay, what is the scariest animal?
Well, I don't like spiders, but that's not an animal.
Well, it can be. I mean, it's a round thing, but animal, amphibian.
Probably, I mean, I've been lucky enough to never have encountered one, probably the tiger, simply because of their hunting tactics, and they wait until you're walking away or facing away from them before they attack.
And you wouldn't have...
well, no. Even if I had 25 swords on me, I don't think I'd stand much of a chance.
I know. Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Good one. Have you ever asked someone for their autograph?
No, that's
Really?
not something I've ever been into. I've had autographs given to me because my father and my dad had met somebody and got an autograph that way.
Oh, cool.
But not something that I actively have ever really sought out.
So which one? Tell me. I'm curious.
I don't remember his name, but my dad used to run security for Lake Okanagan Resort out on the west side.
Okay.
And some BC Lion players were there, and he recognized them and got an autograph.
Oh, so the old school BC Lion
Old
players when
school,
I was,
yes.
okay. Favorite action movie? This has got to be.
Actually, the Matrix movies.
Oh, really?
It has some sword play in
It
there.
does.
But the choreography and the storyline speaks to me, even though it's a story that's been told a million times. But,
Okay.
for some reason, those ones speak to me.
I love that. Okay, so you get one song to listen to for the rest of your life. What is it? Now, this doesn't have to be on repeat for the rest of your life, but
good.
just like you've got one record and you're like, oh, I'm going to listen to this the rest of my life.
Oh, geez. There's a Man of War song. Oh. Eagles Fly, I believe it's called.
Man of War, Eagles Fly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's something like that. I used to listen to Man of War a lot when my kids were younger, and it was one of the songs that one of the twins used to sing with me go on the way to school. So she'd be singing at the top of her lungs, and I'd be singing at the top of my lungs because it was a little loud.
That's
in the truck.
that's your bonding moment. Oh,
Yes.
I love that. Favorite smell?
Well, I can go technical or I can go squishy.
I don't know, you
technical,
tell me.
I like lavender. I love the smell of lavender. Squishy would be my wife.
Oh, yeah, and she is. Anyway, least favorite smell?
Oh. The smell of the dentist office when they're putting fillings in your teeth.
That's perfect, because I've just been to the dentist.
Ooh.
Okay, I get it. That's a good one. That's the first. That's a good one. Flat or sparkling? Oh, you're thinking. Water, really, but
Okay.
whatever. It could be.
I don't mind sparkling water, but growing up not having drunk a lot of sparkling water,
Right.
the lack of sweetness always kicks me in the back of the throat.
Because you're used to the
Because there's
Coca-Cola
an
or whatever.
expectation, and it's not there, and it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, oh yeah, this is okay, and then from then on.
Most used app on your phone?
It's a toss-up between Instagram and Pinterest. I love Pinterest.
Ooh,
because,
why?
well, part of the medieval
of
group
course.
stuff is I do a lot of hobbies that relate to that. Woodworking, metalworking, that kind of thing. So there's such a plethora of ideas
it's
and amazing things people
endless.
have done. Yes, it is a time sink, definitely.
Yes. Describe the rest of your life in 5 words. It doesn't have to be a sentence, or it could be just 5 words, or it can be a sentence.
Not enough time.
Oh, gosh, you're so amazing. So, this is the same number that I always use. What is the number I'm thinking of?
27?
No. Now, for the last question, and then you will be known, Tyler Terrian, do you think that Kelowna needs a new performing arts center?
I'm not too connected at the hip to the performing arts group, although, I mean, I know several actors.
Even though you're an artist?
Yes, but it's an artist of a different sort.
Yeah.
Though I have run into the issue of trying to book space and trying to find time that works for Ascalon and with the venue, and it is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So having another venue or two that people can go to use to perform, to hold readings, what have you, probably is needed, just considering the difficulty of trying to book space.
Thank you so much for coming on to my show.
Thank you.
I feel like I've learned a lot, and I hope that you guys have all learned a lot. And we're going to see you next time on Whattaya Say with Anna J. See you later.